Hello, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining today. My name is Chris Mitchell. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at Infocommunications. So if you're new to our webinar series, thanks for joining. Today we're going to be talking about HyperV and the Mitel ShoreTel system. If you haven't had a chance to hit our website, look at some of the upcoming webinars. We have a Connect Readiness webinar coming up next week. We also have a CRM and contact center, so if you're interested in, how you can integrate your CRM and your contact center together for screen pops, for routing decisions and stuff, we're going to have a great conversation on that. And then our August webinars will be added to our website hopefully this week. So there'll be some new webinars as well to look forward on our website. If you have questions throughout today's webinar, feel free to post them in the questions section. I'll try to answer them as I go throughout. I also save some time at the very end of the webinar today. This webinar I think it was scheduled for an hour. We won't utilize an hour. I've been trying to keep them a little bit shorter to free up some more time in your guys' schedule. So we'll keep it, unless we have a lot of questions, we should keep it probably closer to 30, maybe 40 minutes today. All right, well, let's hop into the agenda here. So I'll do a quick intro for anybody who's newer to our webinar series about Inflow, and then I'm going to hop right in and we're going to talk HyperV in 14.2. A lot of our customers are still on 14.2, so we'll kind of talk through what you can do in HyperV in 14.2, and then we'll talk in what you can do in HyperV and Connect. That's really where a lot of the new features and stuff come into. Then I have a slide, a couple things to be aware of when you're using HyperV in ShoreTel, and then I'll save a little bit of time at the end for Q&A for any questions that I don't answer throughout the presentation. So, all right, well, who is Infocommunications? We're a unified communications and contact center company, and that's all we do. We don't do IT services, anything like that. We don't sell a huge product line. We sell, Mitel solutions. We sell RingCentral and Genesys Peer Cloud, so pretty small product catalog that we sell. We're a platinum partner with Mitel, which is the highest, and we're a delivery partner with RingCentral, which means we can install and support RingCentral, and we're a Genesys Gold partner, which is their highest tier. So we try to focus on a few core things as part of the unified communications and contact center and do them really well. We're a nationwide company, so we do service, all over the U.S. We have about 45 employees, between 45 and 50, somewhere right in that range, spread out across 10 different states. So, we can assist companies all over the U.S. We have just over 200,000 phones that we currently support, and 800, ShoreTel Mitel customers with, nationwide offices and international offices all over the world. We're maniacal about our customer experience. If you hit our website, we publish, phone answer times, customer satisfaction, ticket resolution times, everything, directly on our website, and we track those times and against industry standards, and we're always between at least 8 to 10 times faster response times than the rest of the telecommunication and communications industries. Our customers span all kinds of different verticals and locations. A few of our bigger customers that you probably are familiar with that we handle, call centers and just regular PBX phone systems for. And a lot of these customers we do CRM integrations for. That's what I mentioned with that webinar coming up for CRM integration. We've done some really cool stuff with Zillow and their Salesforce integrations and stuff like that as well. All right, well, we're going to hop right into HyperV with 14.2. Like I said, is of our 800 customers, I would probably say about at least 500 are still on 14.2. So it's still a platform that's out there. Mitel just extended support beyond the end of this year to June 30th of next year. No, September 30th of next year. So they did extend the the end of life of 14 a little bit longer, which was nice because like I said, we have a lot of customers still on 14.2, so it's good to be able to still support those customers and work towards migration plans on to Connect. And a lot of time, the reason we got to get we got to do some work with HyperV is because we have switches that are end of life or end of support. So there's some great uses with HyperV to virtualize some of that in your environment. So with Mitel ShoreTel, 14.2, you can see on the right-hand side kind of the architecture layout, of the 14.2 platform, different servers, switches, phones, clients, trunks and stuff like that. So right now in 14.2, your HyperV capabilities are limited to servers. So you can do your headquarters or director server that can be, virtualized in HyperV. You could do your DVSs or DVMs. Some people call it distributed voicemail, distributed voice servers. Those could be done in HyperV. You could do your contact center server. So if you have ECC, 7, 8, 9, any of those, there are some limitations there. We'll talk about it in a minute, but you could do your contact center server, and you could do your redundant contact center server. The redundant contact center server is one of my favorite server options for contact center because you can have a live, hot standby server for the contact center. And if your contact center server ever goes down, your desktop agents automatically reconnect to the redundant contact center server, and all your calls route to the redundant contact center server automatically. It's a live, instant, failover over to that. And we've had customers who have failed over to the redundant contact center server for a week or two before they even realized they had failed over to it, because it's so seamless. If you don't, if you don't set up the email notification that it failed over, a lot of time you won't even know that you failed over to that redundant contact center server. So that's probably one of my favorite features of the contact center capabilities is that live redundant, that does syncing and everything like that between both servers. So if you have a contact center and you haven't bought the redundant contact center license, definitely talk to your account manager about having that redundant contact center, because between a redundant contact center and a DVS license, or for DVS server, you can really provide some significant DR capabilities built into the 14.2 platform, or even the Connect platform going forward. So with HyperV and 14.2, you can do all, the bulk of the servers out there can already be virtualized. So some of the requirements around HyperV and 14.2 is obviously you have to be on 14.2. If you're on 14.1 or 14.0, we do need to upgrade at least to 14.2, and that's important for upgrading to Connect on the future as well. They're only doing 14.2 upgrades to Connect. They've stopped testing all the older versions. Just from a time perspective, it was taking up too much time. So you got to get to 14.2 before you can upgrade to Connect anyway. So 14.2 is the one that's certified for virtualization on servers and stuff as well. If you want to use HyperV and Contact Center, you do need to be on this minimum build number or later in order to support the virtual servers. Before that, you had to have like a physical server or you had to be in VMware. So that's the minimum build for the HyperV virtual server. We had a lot of customers who were running Contact Center before that, in HyperV or VMware, and it just wasn't certified. Now it's a certified option for your Contact Center and redundant Contact Center servers. So you have to be on HyperV version 3.0, which I believe is the Server 2012 version of it. So with 14.2, you can support Server 2008 and Server 2012. We recommend Server 2012 or Server 2012 R2 preferably, if you were going to do any kind of server migrations to a newer server. Connect supports 2008 64-bit, 2012, and 2016. But 14.2 only supports it does the 08 and the 2012. So if you're looking to maybe do any kind of server migration work now that'll work over to Connect, 2012 R2 is the preferred one, because that server can be put into production now on 14.2, and it'll also work in Connect, as a kind of stepping stone if you want to get to 2016 in the future. So a few limitations as far as like on a HyperV, what you can use in 14.2. Server-based only, minimum contact center build, and it has to be on Server 2012 or 2008, which I didn't put on here. But so you do have some capabilities, but not a ton, when it comes to 14.2. I didn't see any questions that came in for 14.2. I was going to say it's pretty standard. That functionality has been around for a number of years. So. All right, so we're going to start talking about HyperV and Connect. This is where a lot of the new functionality comes into play. also, but there's some more gotchas and stuff you got to be aware of as well. All right, so on the right-hand side, you see a little virtualization option. One of the images that they released previously. So you can kind of see some of the things you can virtualize. With HyperV and Connect, like I said, we expand the capabilities. We still have our director server, our DBSs, our contact center server, our redundant contact center. But one nice little wrinkle that they've added to this now for Connect is that there's a Linuxbased DBS now. So our director server still has to be Windows, but your DBSs now can be Windows or Linux. If you choose Windows, obviously you build your own server to load it onto. If you choose Linux, it's actually an ISO that's provided from Mitel ShoreTel that you open up the ISO in HyperV, and and it builds your image and everything for you, and then the Linux image gets its updates from your headquarters server. Every time you push an update to your server, it pushes out, it'll patch any changes to the Linux DBS. So it does take out another Windows license you have to worry about. Also, all the Linux updates and everything like that are maintained by your headquarters server. So there's one less server. It's really like an appliance. You think of it as a fully maintained appliance when it comes to that. So that was a new feature in Connect, was the Linux-based DBS, and that's fully supported in HyperV now. Switches on the right-hand side, that's where you can see a lot of the new switches. So the virtual switches were released in 14.2, but they were only released on VMware because of ShoreTel and VMware had a huge partnership in place. When Mitel bought ShoreTel, Mitel is a huge HyperV partner with Microsoft. So that was one of the first things they started working on, is we need to make all of the virtualization equal between VMware and HyperV. So they went to work immediately on that. So we can do virtual phone switches. So a virtual phone switch really just replaces like an SG90, or an SG50, one of those regular switches you have that runs phones. You just virtualize that, that switch. And you can do what they call primary switches. This is your like full production switches. Each virtual phone switch can handle, I think, 1,000 phones, and it's all based on how many CPU cores you assign to it. They're pretty minimal as far as memory. I think they need 4 gigs of RAM, 20 gigs of hard drive space, I think, is what the phone switch needs. And then it all comes down to real-time processing power with the CPU cores. The more cores you give it, the more phones you can handle. So I think the minimum is 250, and then it goes 500, 750, 1,000. So depending on how many cores you want to give it, it'll decide how many phones that switch can run. So you can run those phone switches in primary or spare. So spare is probably the most common, I would say, because you can spin up the spare virtual phone switches for free. There's no licensing cost to the spare switches. You can deploy 100 of them if you want. And what that does is gives you some redundancy to your physical switches. One of your physical switches go down, your phones can immediately register to a spare virtual switch and not have to be down out of service. They can immediately register over, calls, they can then place and receive calls. How the spare switch failover occurs is any calls that are currently connected won't even be affected. They can, the switch fails and all the phones fail over to the, to the spare switch. Any call that's already in play will continue to, to stay connected, because that phone switch doesn't do packet transfers and anything like that. It does call buildup and call teardown, so it doesn't even affect calls that are that are already connected. It will disconnect any call that's ringing at the time that hasn't been connected yet if your switch fails and the spare kicks in. The spare will also pick up hunt group resources, so it can take care of hunt group and phone resources for a physical switch. So the only thing you really lose when a spare switch takes over for a physical switch is anything analog, physically connected to that switch. If you have a fax machine or overhead paging system, something like that connected. You can use SIP ATAs to connect fax machines and paging systems if you wanted to kind of pull those resources off of a physical switch to do more virtual as well. So a lot of capabilities with the virtual phone switch. You can also do virtual trunk switches. So that's like if you want to do SIP trunking, you can do a virtual SIP trunk switch and kind of hand off all of your trunks instead of maybe having a PRI local. You can have it handing off as SIP, over to the ShoreTel system. So nice flexibility there for customers that are maybe looking to get rid of analog lines or looking to get rid of PRIs. You can go over to virtual SIP. And then you get some capability with the virtual SIP. You can expand, you don't have to buy them in 23 channel PRIs. You can buy 5 channels of SIP and expand it to 7 or 10. You get a little bit more flexibility in how you expand your trunking capacity when you go to SIP. Appliances, so I've kind of bundled a few things here into the appliances category here. So we have the collaboration appliance. You probably, if you've been around a while, you know that as the service appliance, the SA100. So you can virtualize your conferencing and IM appliance now inside Hyper-V or VMware. So if you're wanting to do instant messaging inside your company, you can spin up that collaboration appliance. There's no cost for instant messaging on that appliance. It's just a simple spin it up, turn it on, and enable it for users, and then instant messaging is available to them. Mobility started out, I think, about 5 or maybe 6 years ago when they bought the company to do mobility. So mobility now is a physical appliance or a virtual appliance. When you upgrade to Connect, every user will get a mobility license included. So if you upgrade to Connect, you can use mobility for free for your employees. So there is some benefit to spinning that up, because you can have the mobile app on your phone that allows you to place calls, receive calls, check your voicemail, change your call handling modes, even instant message from the client on the mobile client. So that there's some nice functionality with that mobile the mobility router that you can virtualize now. There's a new Edge Gateway that can be deployed as well. Edge Gateway it replaces the VPN concentrator. So if you want to do remote phones, the 400 series phones remote connect to the Edge Gateway. The Edge Gateway also can allow your desktop Connect client to connect to to your office without a VPN connection. So it uses an SSL certificate in port 443, to encrypt that traffic. But you can use the Edge Gateway for connecting clients and phones out from outside the office into the office. So those can all those appliances can be virtualized. They all use some variety of SSL certificates to accomplish encryption now. The last thing that you can do in Hyper-V now as well is you can do virtual session border controllers. So audio codes and Ingate both currently offer virtual SBCs that can be virtualized in Hyper-V. AdTran has one in testing right now. They have a couple carrier partners who are testing the virtual AdTran. So there'll soon be 3 virtual session border controllers that can act as as kind of the interpreter between the ShoreTel system and your carrier for handing off of handshakes, any kind of changes we need that SBC to be the translator for between your carrier. If your carrier doesn't support native connection, most carriers require a session border controller between ShoreTel and the carrier. So your options right now are mainly physical, but now we have more virtual options as well to virtualize that session border controller if you're trying to limit physical hardware, maybe in a data center or something like that. All right, so some of the requirements around utilizing Hyper-V and Connect. So you have to be on a newer build. Well, I wouldn't say newer really. You have to be on a build from, I think it was May of last year is when this build came out. Connect was out for about a little over a year before that, before it supported Hyper-V. So you do need to be on the 2187, 3629 or later build of Connect in order to support Hyper-V. If you're on a newer, older version of Connect than that, it'll only support VMware for like the virtual switches and appliances and stuff like that. So the nice thing is if you're already on Connect, but you're on an older version of Connect, the upgrade is you're already on Connect. So it's a lot easier to do a Connect build upgrade than a 14.2 to Connect upgrade, which is a lot more work. If you want to virtualize your contact center, there's the minimum build for the contact center to be virtualized inside of Hyper-V on that. So, and really that minimum build number just ties to the minimum build number in option number 1. So it just there's a minimum build that build of Connect for the PBX supports on the contact center side. So when you're talking versions of HyperV, when it comes to Connect, is we support the 2012 R2 Gen 1 and Gen 2 server options. So that's key. Like I did say that the Connect does support 2008 R2, but not in the not in the HyperV environment. It wants the 2012 R2 Gen 1 or Gen 2. They have also, they do have support for 2016 Gen 1 as far as that goes. So if you're looking to migrate from 2012 to 2016, just make sure that it's currently set to Gen 1 on your 2016. I do know they are doing some testing on Gen 2 in newer server OSs as well, but right now your 2012 R2 and 2016 are I would say our recommended versions for Connect. I did say it supports 2008 64-bit. We're trying to recommend customers get off of that, as we know 2008 into support is coming up. So we're trying to make sure we recommend customers get off of that that OS as soon as possible and get at least onto 2012 or 2016 preferably, so you have some runway on when that product's going to be discontinued. All right, I don't see any questions that I didn't answer already, so let's hop over and talk about things to know here. So when you're looking at deploying HyperV, for 14.2 or Connect, there's a few things you want to be aware of. Is static MAC addresses are required when you're deploying your HyperV images. Yes, you could do DHCP and then on your DHCP server set reservations and everything like that. But at this point, they're not recommending that. They're recommending static MAC addresses. I haven't had a problem with this, with any customers in the past, so I don't anticipate that being a problem going forward. For customers, set all of your stuff to static, because the MAC addresses are programmed into Shorebird Directory, like for everything. So if the MAC address isn't static on like a switch or something like that, the switches will continue to work. You're going to throw a lot of errors, and a lot of in your log files are going to fill up really fast with entries in there, but it will continue to function by IP address. The one MAC address feature that I think it doesn't work when it changes is on a server base. The Windows OS freaks out and stuff like that more when the database doesn't match. Then it shuts down the database in MySQL when the MAC address doesn't match with the server set to. So servers, very, very important. It has to be static. Switches, we highly recommend the static set on the switches as well, just so you don't risk the MAC address ever changing, or if you're to replace or the IP address changing, sorry. Or when you reboot the MAC address, if you do static MAC addresses, when you reboot, a lot of time that will change on the MAC address. So we just want to avoid that at all costs if possible. So currently, the replication and the snapshots piece of HyperV are not supported. So the only time you can run the replication or the snapshots is if you shut down your ShoreTel services. So if we do there's a bat file on each of your servers that allows you to stop and start your services, so that you could do it if you need to do a snapshot or something like that. You can even time that that bat file to run if you needed to do nightly snapshots or something like that. So currently, unless you shut down the services like in a maintenance window, that's the only time you could do any kind of replication or snapshots in HyperV. They are hoping to get those working. They do have high availability working in VMware, so we know it can work. They're just they're still working on some capabilities for the replication piece of HyperV, but the goal is to support replications. Snapshot, even in VMware, isn't recommended because we have live running MySQL databases, and a lot of time when we do a snapshot, the snapshot causes some issues. When you try to restore it, the MySQL database throws a bunch of errors and stuff like that. So even in VMware, snapshots aren't recommended. unless you shut down the services so that your MySQL database isn't running live. But the replication, we do expect the replication to be supported long-term, similar, like I said, to the high availability in vMotion inside of VMware. So replication, we do expect that to come hopefully in the near future. Like I said, Mitel's a big Hyper-V and Microsoft shop, so they've, all of the other Mitel platforms support Hyper-V, and they've supported them for years. So we're hoping that they continue to develop more features with Hyper-V so that you can move it between hosts and stuff like that in the future. DoubleTake is not currently supported with Hyper-V. I don't know if you're not familiar with DoubleTake. DoubleTake's been around a long time, as long as I can, at least 10 or 12 years. DoubleTake is a third-party software application that allows you to set up a secondary server, load it with the ShoreTel software, and then you load a DoubleTake application onto each server. And DoubleTake will take care of the synchronization between two servers and takes care of a heartbeat between two servers. And what it does is it continues to monitor the primary server, and if the primary server has a problem, then it elevates the secondary server to it's take over for the primary server. It'll take care of the network, the network IP address change and everything like that as well, so that your users automatically, your phones and switches and voicemail automatically get rerouted to the secondary DoubleTake server. So that feature, DoubleTake is still supported in Connect. They just don't have it worked out with Hyper-V yet. DoubleTake isn't very popular. I want to say in the 13 years I've been doing ShoreTel, I think I've been involved in maybe 2 or 3 DoubleTake deployments, in that whole time period. So it's not a very common product. One of the biggest things, I'd say, from a cost perspective, it used to be really expensive when they used to have to do physical server replication. I want to say 2 DoubleTake licenses was like $13,000. Now it's closer down to like the $3,000 to $5,000 for DoubleTake. So it is an option if you're looking to do replication. On that, DoubleTake is an option, and it will be supported again for Hyper-V in the future. Like I mentioned, 2016 Gen 2 is not currently supported. We are expecting, it to be supported soon. So they're continuing to do testing everything on Gen 2. They support 2012 Gen 1 and Gen 2. So I do expect that to be supported pretty soon. So the other thing I know that we've had some questions on is Server 2019. We have heard it's in testing for Server 2019. We don't have a release date of when that will be supported, but it is in testing for Server 2019 as well. All right. Well, I think I got to all the. I think I answered all the questions that were asked during the presentation around that. If you do have any questions, feel free to post them into the question, and I'll either follow up with them. I can answer them right now, or we can follow up via email with those questions. If you have some questions that come up, maybe from meetings internally or something, feel free to always email them over to us. If you have an account manager, you can also feed your questions through your account manager or your customer success management team as well. They can grab a sales engineer to have a phone call with you to answer questions as needed as well. So if you have questions, we're always here to answer them, and we look forward to seeing you on a future webinar with Inflow Communications. So thanks for joining today. We look forward to talking to you guys again.